Now, how about yourself?
I'm doing great as well. Hopefully, we're able to stay connected on the show, and hopefully, Riverside will actually process the mock draft this time. So, yes, we did record an 18 mock draft yesterday that was supposed to be posted today, but it never fully uploaded. And since it was just an 18 mock, I didn't feel it was necessarily important to go again, just because everyone, when you're drafting in an 18 format, is going to be drafting an insane team. So we ended up basically scratching the 18 mock. We're going to go ahead and do the 10 team mock here. And instead of the 18 mock, we'll be replacing with a tips for your fantasy football draft. So that will be coming, and I believe in 4 days. We'll have a 10 team today, 12 team 2 days from now, and then 4 days from now will be the tips. So that's what we got here. But we got a 10 team mock draft to go over today. AJ, today you have your first fantasy. Is it your first fantasy football draft, or is it just a fantasy football draft?
Just the first. It's the first one of the year.
And what? How many teams are in it?
I want to say it's like 15 or something.
Wow. Okay. So it's a big league.
It's the Coastal League one. So
So
just
you
got
guys just added members or what?
yeah, just open it up, put it in the group chat of if you want to join, you can join.
Might
So,
have to.
no,
That's
you don't have to.
I know, I'm kidding. That's exciting to see there that so you're doing, is it odd number or even number? Because you said 15.
I don't remember honestly. I was like the fifth person to join, and after that, I was like, because he opened it as like a 20 team league, which I
Right?
was like that's crazy. And then last
Yeah.
time I looked at one, it was like 14 or 15 people or something already joined.
Well,
So
unfortunately, I was gonna say, unfortunately, we've done obviously some big mock drafts, but today we're doing the 10 team mock draft, or at least going over it. And we actually did this mock draft yesterday. So, when we go over the picks here, it might need a little bit refresher on who we selected and why we selected them. But, anyways, I had the third overall pick. AJ had the fifth overall pick. CMAC went 101, CD 102. I selected Tyreek Hill 103. I'm going to echo what I talked about earlier with Tyreek Hill because I've drafted him in a couple mock drafts. And the main reason why I've selected Tyreek Hill is because he is my wide receiver one. And when drafting a fantasy football team, particularly when I'm in the top 4 or 5 picks, I'm going at the big target guys. I'm trying to get my running back one, wide receiver one, tight end one, or quarterback one. It's hard to get multiple of those. So I can get multiple of those. I'm in a great position. And again, your rankings may vary from person to person, but Tyreek is my number one overall wide receiver. Select him right here, hoping that he's going to be able to get close to 2,000 yards once again. Brees Hall, surprisingly, in my opinion, went 104, and then you selected Jamar Chase 105.
Yeah, so I want to go a little bit different direction. I haven't drafted Jamar at all this year, and it's ahead of other guys like Amon Ron, Jay Jetta, usually right before him, are kind of in that range of like the next three guys after CD and Tyreek. But I'm really just banking on Joe Burrow being healthy because last year Burrow wasn't healthy, he missed most of the season, and Jamar still had 100 receptions, 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns. I'm hoping they can get back to that double-digit touchdowns. We saw 13 his rookie year, 9 his second year, and then went down with basically no Joe Burrow all season. And when Joe Burrow wasn't, it was just bad in general. But honestly, if I'm able to get the type of production that I saw his rookie year, having maybe not 100 receptions, but more in the 80 to 90 range, give me 1,500 yards and double digit touchdowns, I could really see that happening because they don't have Joe Mixon anymore, who's taking receptions out of the backfield. Boyd isn't there anymore. They still have T. Higgins, but I still don't really know what's really up with that situation. Everything's kind of cooled down. I believe he's still on the roster, but I don't know if he's going to get traded or what. Still kind of up in there, but it's not as big as like the Brandon Ayuk stuff that's been happening as of recent. But I'm still banking on Jamar Chase and Burrow having that connection. If Burrow's healthy, I mean, we've seen him finish as a top 5 quarterback, and Jamar's obviously the number one option there.
Bijan 106, Amon Ron 107, Jay Jets 108, AJ Brown 109, Garrett Wilson 110, Puka 201, Barkley 202, Gibbs 203, Devontae 204, Taylor 205. You select Marvin Harrison Jr. 206. So yeah, really going with a change of pace in this mock.
Yeah, I mean, like my other mocks, I always try to get 2 running backs in the first 3 rounds, but I need to try to change it up just a little bit because it's you don't know what's going to happen in your drafts. Like the kind of general range of where guys go, but you never know. Someone could go draft Jameer Gibbs with the third pick, and then it just kind of throws a lot of things off. And recently, I've been drafting a lot of Marvin Harrison. I think just because I've started to build up the thought that Kyler Murray could have a really good bounce back year, and he only has two targets there really. It's Marvin and Trey McBride. And honestly, I think Marvin could have a huge year. He could potentially finish as a top 10 wide receiver. Uh, I mean, that's kind of where he's being drafted as like number 10 or 9 or 10 right there. But I don't know. I just want to go a different direction. And again, there's always one rookie that just breaks out and has a huge year. Not always the first wide receiver running back off the board and during the actual like NFL draft, but yeah, I mean, we've seen what Marvin can do in college, and honestly, he probably is one of the best wide receiver prospects we've seen in a while. And if he's going to be getting most of the targets there, if he's able to get, I don't know, 35% of the targets from Kyler Murray each game, that I'm expecting him to get probably 5 to 7 catches at least every week.
ETN 207. I select Drake London 208. This again is my strategy kind of alongside yours. I like to get two running backs early, but especially in a PPR format here, I had the option to get two wide receivers, and I thought there was two great options at the wide receiver position. Obviously, first was Tyreek Hill, who I selected with the 103, and then Drake London, who I selected with the 208. I mean, Drake London, you look at Drake London as a whole player-wise, he hasn't really had a lot of avenues for success just because his quarterback play has been really spotty. But now he goes into an ideal situation with Kirk Cousins as his quarterback. And I think this is a really great opportunity for Drake London to continue to have success. Drake London, I think, has had the potential to have success and has shown some capabilities of doing it. Now sliding in as the wide receiver 2 on my team, I feel very comfortable there with London. Collins 209, Kyron 210, Laporta 301, A-Chain 302, and I get my big time running back in Derrick Henry. So I took a little bit of a gamble with getting Drake London at 208, hoping that Derrick Henry was going to be available, and he was. And now I got a bully back running back in Derrick Henry who's poised for a big season in Baltimore, but a big fantasy season as well, just because Derrick Henry has had success in the past and he did it with a really bad offensive line. Now he gets one of the best offensive lines in football, one of the best quarterbacks, the reigning MVP, great tight end play. I mean, the Baltimore Ravens offense looks phenomenal, and Derrick Henry is going to be a forefront for that. And I think Derrick Henry really has the potential to get upwards of 16, 17, maybe even 18 plus touchdowns this year, plus the rushing value that comes from it. If you can get him in your third round, especially in a 10-team league, that's absolutely amazing, and you should be ecstatic. Debo 304, you select Travis Kelce 305.
Yeah, so Kelsey here, second tight end off the board. Again, I just want to try a different strategy. Just all receivers at this point. Kelsey, basically just have him as a glorified receiver, just an extra position there. But I feel like once you get to like 10 team, 12 team, as much as I do want to go two running backs, I feel like the high end wide receivers just go so early, and you can get RB number ones for certain teams a little bit later on in the draft, depending on how long you really want to wait. I feel like the elite wide receivers are just so limited, and you can get production out of running back, especially later in your draft. When your leagues do get a little bit bigger, I think 10 is right around the time that you can start doing of 20 rushing touchdowns. You can find that production out of the running back position somewhere else. You just got to be able to find someone to have that production. So that's why I went Kelsey. I mean, I'm going to give myself a little bit of an edge up on the competition of going up, getting a top 3 tight end.
Pacheco 306, Josh Allen 307, Olave 308, Pittman 309, Jacobs 310, Ayuk 401, Rashad White 402, Mahomes 403, James Cook 404, Evans 405. You get your first running back in Alvin Kamara at 406.
Yeah, I'm really expecting a bounce back year with Kamara, especially with this new offense, 49ers offense. I think they're just going to try to get the ball into his hands, especially in the receiving game a lot more, especially if they're going to be running a lot more play action, more of that West Coast offense that Derek Carr's more used to. And Derek Carr's a veteran quarterback. I mean, with his first couple reads aren't there, he's just going to dump it off. He's smart enough to know that and not try to force the ball anywhere where it's not needed. And Kamara, I mean, in the fourth round, if he's able to finish with like 800 through the air and like 800 on the ground, like we've seen, and him get to 12, 13 touchdowns between the two. I mean, in the fourth round, mid fourth round, that's the running back that I'll take as my number one option, especially if I already have such a lead at the wide receiver / tight end position up to that point with drafting those guys. I just want looking for a PPR back mainly at this point.
Jalen Hurts 407. I selected Lamar Jackson 408. Actually, the first time in these mock drafts where I've been able to get Lamar Jackson. I'm super excited about that. he is my quarterback too, just behind Josh Allen. But both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson could have similar play styles and really similar seasons this year. Getting the reigning MVP, I have him in my dynasty league. Feel great about him there, but I like him in redraft leagues every single year just because his rushing upside is absolutely insane. One of the best, if not the best, rushing quarterback in the NFL, which is going to provide you with tremendous outlets for fantasy and get those extra rushing yards. So it's a win-win situation with Lamar. On top of that, you have Derrick Henry to kind of lighten the load a little bit as far as, having to rely solely on the run. You can able to air it out a little bit, which I know hurts fantasy value, but it may not, depending on if the passing yards that he's able to complete with guys like Zay Jones, who are poised for a big season, or Mark Andrews as well. So win-win situation here, getting Lamar Jackson at 408. Waddle 409, Cup 410, Metcalf 501, Mixon 502, and then I get Lamar's teammate in Mark Andrews 503. So that's 3 straight Ravens for me. Henry, Lamar, and Andrews, and I feel very confident doing that, especially going into this year with the way that Baltimore is looking. Had Mark Andrews last year, obviously dealt with an injury, but what I say about Mark Andrews every time is the fact that his goal line production is going to skyrocket. I'm banking on the fact that the Ravens are going to get a lot of points, and if they're able to get into the red zone, I basically got a win-win situation everywhere with this team. I got Derrick Henry rushing the football, Lamar rushing or throwing the football, and Andrews, the red zone demon that he is. It's a win-win situation. I think people are kind of writing off Andrews, even though he's 2 years younger than Kittle. Sometimes Kittle is getting as much praise or even more praise. So I really think this is a steal here, especially in a 10-teamer in the 5th round at the 503. And again, if you're going to pick a team to kind of get 3 guys from the Baltimore Ravens, is a great team to do that, especially quarterback, running back, and a receiver option. After Andrews, Diggs goes off at 504, and you select Kenneth Walker at 505.
Yeah, Kenneth Walker, I think, is really poised for a big year. Pretty underwhelming year last year. Dealt with a little bit of injuries, and I get that this new offense with Washington, or last year's head coach with Washington, is now over Seattle. They threw the ball a lot. But one of the things I saw of a report, the head coach saying that Kenneth Walker as a receiving back has grown this offseason. Like, he's becoming a pretty good receiving back this year. And honestly, he could take over that third, being that one through 3 down back. With Charbonnet there, I get he's supposed to be more of that receiving back, but honestly, if Walker is able to prove that he can be a good receiving threat, he's already the 1 and 2 back there, or first and second down back. Why not just leave him out there on the field, especially for how dynamic he is? And also the other thing, he showed up at camp the other day completely bald, and it was like I saw something saying he's basically going to be AP 2.0, which I don't think he's going to be Adrian Pearson 2.0, but he kind of had like the similar with the bald head, the cross earring on, basically just ready to go. And he looks pretty bulked up this season. I mean, he looks like he's ready to go this year. And you know what? So what if they're passing the ball a lot? That means they're not going to be stacking the box as much. So that means there's going to be less seven men in the box, and he's going to have more open lanes potentially. And if not, I'm fine with him being out of the backfield. And honestly, waiting this long for my second RB in the 5th round, I'm just looking for someone who has at least opportunity to become the RB1 in that system.
DJ Moore 506, Devontae Smith 507, McBride 508, Kincaid 509, Connor 510, Kyler 601, Neighbor 602, Flowers 603, Kittle 604, Stroud 605, and you select your quarterback and Anthony Richardson at 606, which in my opinion I think is an absolute steal.
Yeah, no, I was really happy to see Richardson there. It was either going to be him or Stroud at that point. And honestly, with my 2 running backs being in the 4th and 5th round and going wide receiver heavy, I want to be able to get a quarterback that has good rushing upside. I get it, like you kind of having like a statue quarterback back there may be good just because he's not going to turn the ball over as much, but I don't have much rushing upside in total with my team. I mean, Kamara's never been the biggest rushing guy. I don't think he has 1,000 yards in a single season on the ground. Kenneth Walker has, but I still believe in him. There's a chance that he'd split some time early on. But Anthony Richardson, I mean, he can be that total package. I keep on saying it after he had that 15 pounds. He's not going to have Cam Newton's MVP year, but he could put up similar numbers to that, just being that bully ball quarterback down low. I mean, it's him or Jonathan Taylor going to be scoring touchdowns once they get into that red zone. So that's why I'm just kind of banking on that Richardson being there and being that rusher. The only question marks, obviously, is him staying healthy from taking the hit.
Pickens 607. I select Amari Cooper 608 as my wide receiver 3, well, technically my flex player. I'm really excited to get a guy like Amari Cooper. I know there's a lot of, I guess, skepticism with Amari Cooper just because, Deshaun Watson is coming back. And also, Cooper has dealt with some injuries briefly the past couple of seasons as well. So there is some skepticism there, but there's no denying the talent that Amari Cooper possesses. In my opinion, he's really the only option on that Cleveland Browns team. And Deshaun Watson really needs to make a run for his money. Even though he's got all this guaranteed money, he's going to lose his job pretty soon if he doesn't figure it out. I think he's going to rely on guys like Cooper, guys like Njoku, who are veteran guys, especially with Cleveland the past couple of seasons in Cooper and Njoku, and can really kind of get Cleveland back on the map and really make Cleveland able to contend this season. But again, it was one of those picks where some could say it was a safe pick, some could say it was a gamble. I'm going to go ahead and take Cooper because I know it's a safe pick at my flex position, and I can consistently get anywhere from 12 to 15 points in a week in and week out with the upside of getting 20 to 25. Burrow 609, Zamir White 610, Love 701, Aaron Jones 702, and I selected Ramondre Stevenson 703. Recently, I haven't been too keen on Ramondre Stevenson just because I'm worried about his rushing upside. Just the fact that not him as a rusher, but the Patriots running game as a whole is pretty dismal. But Ramondre Stevenson's going to get a lot of his fantasy money from, receiving and his PPR value, which he's done a great job of the past couple of seasons. On top of that, he's the only main running back that people should be worried about in New England. Maybe a guy like Pierre Strong every now and then, but Zeke's gone, which took away some Ramondre carries last season. But now that Zeke's in Dallas and it's really just Ramondre's job to lose, quite honestly, Ramondre's poised for potentially his biggest season yet. And again, even though the Patriots offense isn't ideal this season, the Patriots offense should do enough. And more than that, Ramondre should do enough out of the passing game to have success and get you that value. And again, for Ramondre, he is my running back too. That's what happens when you take 3 receivers, a tight end, and a quarterback before that. But I'm very confident with Ramondre as my running back too. Not a guy that's going to be a running back one by season's end, but a guy that could kind of week in and week out establish some sense of consistency. Higgins 704, and you select David Montgomery 705.
Yeah, so I just need to find guys who are going to get chances for each team, especially wide receiver, tight end heavy at the beginning of the draft. I mean, Montgomery was great last year. I was a big Montgomery fan when he was in Chicago. Obviously, didn't get much opportunity there. But once coming over to Detroit, I'm kind of hoping it's not a thing where once a player is like first or second year in Detroit, they lose the NFL in touchdowns and like just fall off the next year. But
Right.
honestly, that running back combo between Montgomery and Gibbs, I think is going to be great. Montgomery's still that bully ball running back that we've seen. He's going to probably be that goal line back once they're within the 5. Gibbs still being that receiving back. Now, yes, Gibbs will take a step forward, but honestly, with Montgomery, if he's in my flex position and he still gets 15, 16 carries a game, maybe a reception or two, we've seen it before where he's outplayed Gibbs when Gibbs had more touches or had more playing time. I think it was the Thanksgiving game last year. Maybe it was Christmas game. He had like 17, 18 rush attempts, but still had like almost 200 yards and like 3 touchdowns that game, or 2 touchdowns. Like we've seen him outperform Gibbs even when Gibbs has shown that he should be the RB1 in total. It's going to be a pretty split backfield, and with the running backs that I have, I mean, none of them are going to be finished as like the RB5 or top 5. Most likely, they're not going to. So I just need to find some type of rotation, really just play the matchups with guys who are going to get opportunities each week.
Yeah, I unfortunately went against David Montgomery in like all 3 of my leagues in that week and was able to lose every one of them. So appreciate him. I got a little bit of bitterness towards him there. A Christian Kirk 706, Singletary 707, Taylor Swift 708, Dak Prescott 709, Tank Dell 710, Keenan 801, Mostert 802, Najee 803, Robinson Jr. 804, Rashee 805. You select Scary Terry McLaurin 806.
Yeah, so it's been a while since I drafted another wide receiver. It's been, 5 rounds since I drafted Marvin. And honestly,
Yeah.
McLaurin, I think, is, again, one of the most underrated wide receivers in the league. He's one of the best hands. I get it. He's with the Commanders, but I think Jay Daniels really only has one option to go to in the receiving game, and it's going to be McLaurin. And I think they're going to try to get the ball out of Jay Daniels' hands very quickly, and I think McLaurin has to be at number 1 read every time. Also, with McLaurin, he's going to have Jane Daniels all year. They already announced that Jane Daniels will be the starting quarterback week 1, and honestly, he has his best quarterback that he's ever had in his career up to this point. I think he had Alex Smith for like 6 games before the injury, and then he has Sam Howell all of last year. Desmond Ritter at one, or not Desmond Ritter, Taylor Heineke at one point was the quarterback there. I think if he has at least consistent QB play throughout the season, he should be getting the majority of the targets. Like if he's able to get like 7 to 8 catches, but also have like 15 targets, or not 15, like 12 to 13 targets a game, I think that he'll have production either way.
Roma Dunze 807. I select Chris Godwin 808. Look, Chris Godwin, I mean, I feel like he's consistent. I know he's not as consistent as his teammate Mike Evans, but Chris Godwin is still relatively consistent when he's able to be on that field. But you look at that Buccaneers offense, they recently just signed Baker Mayfield, so they have an emphasis on, letting Baker throw the ball to his receivers and Godwin and Evans, as well as, tight ends like Otten and whatnot. But I really think Godwin's going to kind of have a sneaky wide receiver 2, high flex this season. I really do believe Godwin's poised for a big season. The biggest thing is, can he stay healthy? And you guys know my philosophy as far as like, I don't really draft running back or players in general based off of injuries, because injuries can happen and they do happen, but you can't really predict them unless there's something like lingering at the start of the campaign. So it's one of those things that I'm not too concerned at all. I think this is going to be a perfect situation for him. And going into this year, I think that, the Buccaneers are going to have good success in the passing game. And a big reason for that is Chris Godwin and his continuedness to get the ball game in and game out. Calvin Ridley, 809. We get weird with the Niners D at 810. Jaden Reed, 901. Deontay Johnson, 902. I selected Jaylen Warren, 903. I know he's dealing with a little bit of an injury. I believe he injured it in his second preseason game, but I'm still very confident about Jaylen Warren. I do like Najee a lot. I mentioned this in the 8 team that never came out, but Najee was, or I guess the Steelers declined Najee's 5th-year option, and they basically said they don't know how to utilize him in the offense. Well, that's concerning if you're a Najee Harris fantasy owner, but that's really exciting if you're a Jaylen Warren fantasy owner. And I think that Warren has the potential to not necessarily push for running back 1 status on the Pittsburgh Steelers this year, but next year, but get an increased role, especially as the year continues to get on, to kind of make that transition from Najee to Jaylen Warren. We obviously know Warren's the more explosive running back, and he'll continue to probably be the more explosive running back. And if you're looking for PPR value of the 2 running backs, I would lean towards Warren more than I would Najee Harris. So again, especially at this position here, he is my running back 3, which is a bit spotty, but he could really be a very great running back 3 that could evolve into a running back 2 on my team. Christian Watson, 904, and you select Tony Pollard, 905.
Yeah, so I'm a big Pollard fan. I'm just kind of hoping that he outperforms Tajay. It's probably going to be a split backfield between the two, which honestly may not be the worst thing for Pollard. I mean, we seen it last year when he was the full-time running back. He just couldn't manage like the workload. And last time he had a big season was when he had that split backfield with Zeke. Now, granted, did he have as many touchdowns or touchdown opportunities? Probably not. But he had over 1,000 yards. People were saying, "Oh, that Tony Pollard is easily an RB1 type of player" when he was having that split backfield. But honestly, if they're able to take off a little bit of that workload, and Pollard's able to get back to what he was when it was him and Zeke, or even close to that, if he's able to finish as like top 25 running back, then able to just play the matchups with, it's nothing I'm going to really mind, especially because I feel like this offense is going to be playing from behind a good amount. The Titans are, and yes, Spears is probably the better receiving back, but they're going to have to rotate between the two of them. So if he's able to average four receptions a game, get me 60-something yards and a touchdown, that's someone who I'm able to bet on. Plus, he's probably will have big games here or there, depending on those matchups. But at this point, with I wouldn't say a weak running back room that I have, but like none of them are going to finish as a top 10 back most likely. Again, same thing with Montgomery. You kind of just have to play the matchups at this point. Uh, Hopefully that one guy or Pollard figures it out. Maybe the split backfield thing really works for him. He's a better running back because of that, having the smaller workload to be able to be more explosive. Kind of just hoping for that.
D-Hop 906, Chubb 907, Jonathan Brooks 908, Browns 909, Worthy 910, Addison 1001, Javonte Williams 1002, Eckler 1003, Zach Moss 1004, McConkey 1005, and then you select Jackson Smith and the Jigba 1006.
Yeah, so JSN, they're going to be passing a lot. As I mentioned, with having Kenneth Walker, they're going to be throwing a lot. And I think JSN should move into that wide receiver 2 spot. I get it that they still have Lockett, but Lockett's still getting older every year. He's still been very productive, but I'm really hoping JSN's able to take that next step forward, especially with how many passing opportunities that they should have this year. Granted, it's not going to be the same Washington offense where they threw like 45, 50 times a game. But if whoever's at quarterback at this point, if it's going to be Hal, Geno Smith, they're going to have to try to push the ball down the field. And I would assume Metcalf's going to be at least have a single high safety on his side every play with at least a cornerback, maybe a double team. And I honestly, with the youth of JSN and how they need to get him to develop and what he was able to show at the end of last year, if he's able to just finish as a top 30 wide receiver, top 32 wide receiver, he's just someone rotation wise. I'm hoping he's able to take that step forward. I mean, we've seen how wide receivers that rookie year have a really bad year, and that second year they have 1,400 yards and 10 touchdowns just out of nowhere. I mean, JSN was one of the top wide receiver prospects in the draft just a couple of years ago. We saw some of the other wide receivers outperform him, but he has the opportunity there if they're going to be passing a lot.
Sutton 1007, Chase Brown I selected 1008. Again, I just kind of keep echoing the same thing at this point of the mock draft season, but Chase Brown is my running back 4 on my team, and I'm very confident in that. Just because Chase Brown has the potential to be a running back 2 on my team. I know Warren has the same thing, but at this part of the draft, you're not going to be getting those starting running backs. You're going to really have to be kind of picking and choosing, trying to get guys with high risk, high reward. And Chase Brown's a guy that's part of that, but also could really establish himself as the running back 1 role early on. The Bengals are an interesting team with an interesting situation where I think it's safe to say that they don't have a clear-cut number 1 running back choice. They have 2 solid options in Chase Brown and Zach Moss now that Joe Mixon is no longer there. And I really think the competition is going to heat up, obviously, towards the end of preseason, as well as, week 1, week 2, week 3. You could see kind of split time there between the 2 running backs. They try to kind of figure out who's their main running back, who they want to go to in certain situations. But that can change as time goes on. I think Chase Brown will cement his status early on in the season, which will help propel him to be the running back 1 for Cincinnati moving forward. And this is a Cincinnati Bengals offense that likes to pass the ball, especially to their running back. So you look at the Bengals as a whole, who's the best option for that? In my opinion, it's Chase Brown. If you were, heavy on running back or confident enough in running back, you might want to take a gamble and take both Zach Moss and Chase Brown just to kind of see which one pans out. Or for some reason, if one gets injured, you got a great plan B option, and you can either have 3 or 4 great running backs or use that as trade bait to propel your team as well. Brian Thomas Jr. 1009, Hollywood Brown 1010, Tyjae 1101, Ford 1102. I selected Jamison Williams 1103. Again, similarly to the last time, Jamison Williams is kind of a high risk, high reward guy. I feel like he's kind of been kicked to the curb a little bit, and I understand why. But then I don't at the same time because, you have Laporta and Amon-Ra who are going to take a lot of the receptions. But this is a Lions team that's going to be passing the ball a lot with Jared Goff. They also recently just extended him. Jamison Williams is kind of like a mini Tyreek Hill in the fact that he's a big-time player. He gets, the 4 catches for 130 yards in a touchdown type situation. And that could really prove vital, especially at this point in the draft where you kind of got to take risks on those guys. Jamison Williams could step up to the plate and be a big-time guy that not many people are talking about, especially early on. So looking at Jamison Williams as a whole, you're going to get immediate success, probably not, but he's a guy weeks 10 through 12 or even later in the fantasy season that could really be a top 20 overall wide receiver, and you're getting him in the 10th, 11th, or even 12th round like I did here. Keon Coleman, 1104. You selected Zeke Elliott, 1105.
Yeah, so Zeke, one of the things that I saw coming or at camp the last couple of weeks is he's down like 15 pounds. He's lost some weight, and
which is nothing for him. He still looks fat because he had 5,000 pounds.
Yeah, so it's also kind of hard to tell because he always has the baggy joggers on and the hoodie underneath the pads and everything. So it's kind of hard to tell, but honestly, there's not much running back competition there. Rico Dowdle, I think, is really the only running back who can fight for carries there. And granted, I don't think Zeke's going to be the workhorse back that we saw like 3 years ago now with the Cowboys, but honestly, he's probably going to be the goal line back. I mean, he was drafted as a Cowboy, was one of the, I wouldn't say great Cowboy running backs, but he's up there. I mean, he had a great few years there. And I think they're just going to give as many opportunities as they can until someone proves that they're better than him. And just off of name wise, I mean, Zeke is much bigger name than anyone else there. And again, Cowboys fans, the Cowboys themselves, they love Zeke. They want to just give him the ball. Most likely, again, he may be one of those running backs who gets you 50, 60 yards on 15 carries, but he could also give you a touchdown or two every single week just because he's going to be more of that bigger goal line back compared to Dowdle or really anyone else there. So I'm kind of just hoping that for the love that the Cowboys have for Zeke, he just gets the opportunity, and no one else, I don't think, will truly beat him out for uh, carries. If it's split carries, it's split carries. But again, I'm drafting him for the touchdown upside that he has.
Kyle Pitts 1106, Lockett 1107, Jerry Judy 1108, Gus the Bus 1109, Evan Ingram 1110, Quorum 1201, Shakir 1202, Bowers 1203, Ferguson 1204, Benson 1205, Njoku 1206, who you selected there as your tight end number 2.
Yeah, so with Njoku, again, he didn't have good success with Watson. It was only with Joe Flacco at the end of the year. But honestly, I kind of like drafting a tight end with one of my last picks here, especially if I go tight end early, like a Travis Kelce. As you mentioned, someone potentially could be trade bait. That could be Travis Kelce for me. I could trade him to go get my RB1 like a couple weeks into the year if he's having a really good year, and just fall back on having Njoku as my tight end one and be able to kind of just move my team forward a little bit there in the running back room just because I waited a little bit longer. And honestly, I think Kelce, he's good, but I want to say outside the first two tight ends every year, like they're within 2 or 3 points of themselves, and there's only like a 10, 15 point drop off between like 3 through 5, and then from 5 to 10, it's only like another like 10 or 15 point drop off. So honestly, if I'm able to propel myself into the having one of these top running backs like a Jonathan Taylor, Gibbs, or someone like that by just having the trade away Kelce and I have to fall back on Njoku, that's something I could with.
Goddard 1207. I selected Josh Palmer 1208. Look, for the fact that Josh Palmer selected in the 12th round, I think is a travesty. I understand people are like not freaking out, but saying that the Chargers are not going to pass the ball. First of all, they are. Okay. They're not going to just run the ball 60 times a game. I understand that that's the situation they're in. I can't think of their OC from Baltimore, but also with Harbaugh, you expect to run the ball 1,000 times a game. But even the most run heavy teams throw the ball, and typically for anywhere from 200 to 250 yards at a minimum a game. So there is going to be passing upside. On top of that, Harbaugh has raved about Justin Herbert at the quarterback position, and maybe they do eventually throw the ball a lot more than they run. And if they do, Joshua Palmer is going to be the guy. Yeah, you bring in Lad McConkey, you have a couple of other options, but people are just kind of throwing Joshua Palmer to the curb, even though Joshua Palmer is the number one wide receiver on this team. He's the one that's established the biggest connection with Justin Herbert, and that's going to continue, especially early on, with Herbert having a couple of relatively lower seasons than before. So it's one of those things where Palmer at the 12th round right here could easily be a flex guy or a wide receiver too, week in and week out. Nobody's giving him a chance because of the addition of Lad McConkey and because they're going to be so run heavy in quotation marks, but they're going to throw the ball a lot. And I think Joshua Palmer is going to be a big reason for success on the Chargers offense. Hawkinson 1209, Dobbs 1210, Dobbins 1301, Chuba Hubbard 1302, and I selected Zach Charbonnet 1303. Again, especially in the 13th round right here, Zach Charbonnet has fallen. I think a lot of people drafted Charbonnet a little bit earlier in last year's draft as a rookie. Just because it wasn't the season that I was expecting or a lot of guys were expecting Charbonnet to have doesn't mean that's not going to continue this year. There's a good chance that Charbonnet gets a good amount here, especially with Ryan Grubb in that offense. So it's one of those things that, Seattle, yeah, Kenneth Walker is their main guy, but if for some reason he were to miss time or miss a game, Charbonnet is the next guy up who could be a reincarnation of Kenneth Walker in a way, who I think overall is a better overall running back as far as receiving value as well as rushing value. So again, a high risk, high roller here in Charbonnet, but I'm very confident and comfortable going with him here in the 13th round. Dowdell 1304. You selected Jaden Daniels 1305.
Yeah, so Jane Daniels, as far as rushing upside, he'd be one of those guys that he's only going to throw for like 2,700 total, 27 passing yards, but have only 17, 18 passing touchdowns and like 7, 8 interceptions. But he could also give you 1,000 yards on the ground and 8 rushing touchdowns, essentially. The only problem with drafting Jane Daniels, I kind of realized afterwards, is I have Richardson and Daniels, which is good rushing upside out of your quarterback position, but also two guys who we've seen take big hits. I mean, we saw it last year, Richardson getting injured. We saw all the big hits that Daniels was taking at LSU. So that is a little bit of a probably not the best pick out of me, just because of potential injury between both quarterbacks I have. But honestly, if he's able to learn how to just get down and not get injured, Daniels, I mean, if he's able to stay healthy, he's one of those guys who can give you 1,000 rushing yards on the ground every year.
Yeah, definitely a high risk pick there, but with a lot of reward. Just to name out the rest of the draft picks here: Chandler, Wright, Ravens, Schultz, Algier, Tucker, Purdy, Gibson, Aubrey, Dolphins, Butker, Bills, Jets, Cowboys, Goff, Koo, Sanders, Fairbairn, Elliott, Steelers, McPherson, Chiefs, Bass, Moody, and Texans. Wow, I'm impressed with myself there. Thank you guys for listening to another episode here on The Truth. If you guys did enjoy it, make sure you follow The Truth on Twitter at The Truth as one to stay up to date with the latest information regarding The Truth, including podcast dates, podcast uploads, and other important information you don't want to miss. Make sure you guys also follow The Truth on Instagram and TikTok as well at the.tt.truth. Are you looking to find a drink that offers peak hydration, raises your energy levels, speeds up your recovery, and keeps your mind sharply focused and memory? Look no further than with Acid Rainwater. I'm excited to partner with Bloodline Sports AZ and Acid Rainwater, which focuses on peak hydration and productivity, while also maintaining the ecosystem-friendly product. Use code HESSON15, that's HESSON15, for 15% off every purchase. As always, I'm your host, the one you love the most, Niall Hesson, joined once again by AJ Ponciano. Take care and good night.